God, hold that smile for us.
Actors are looking to renegotiate their contracts in big-budget movies.
Scarlett Johansson, the star of Disney's latest Marvel movie Black Widow, has filed a lawsuit today in Los Angeles Superior Court against Disney.
Traditional movie contracts for A-list talent include sizable upfront payments and a lucrative back-end deal based mostly on box office ticket sales. But with more films going straight to streaming platforms, actors are now looking for a piece of the streaming profits.
The movie wouldn't exist without actors, and especially actors of certain stature and with certain names. They drive people to those theaters, or they drive people to download that subscription service, and I do believe that they should get a portion of that.
Paying stars a bigger piece of digital sales would upend the traditional pay structure for talent, and for some, it could lead to tens of millions of dollars in residual pay. Money that agents and actors say is now being left on the table. Here's a look at how the Scarlett Johansson lawsuit against Disney could be a catalyst that changes the way Hollywood stars get paid. To understand what's at stake with actors, you have to understand how their pay is tied to a film's distribution cycle.
There are so many unique and creative ways for actors and performers to make additional compensation for their participation in films.
Natasha Matalana, who's been representing actors for over 15 years, says depending on the contract, back-end bonuses in the long run can be more lucrative for actors than an upfront payment.
Some of that compensation is creatively carved out by way of calling it a production fee or a marketing fee or back-end points.
Those bonuses are tied to how well the film does at each point of the distribution cycle. Traditionally, that cycle looks like this. Feature films start their journey with a theatrical release that can last anywhere from a few weeks to a few months, depending on how well it does in the box office. At this stage, talent contracts for actors can include a cut of the opening box office sales. After it's run in the theaters, a film would then make its way onto DVD or pay-per-view. Depending on their contract, an actor might make a cut of that as well. About 6 months after that, the title would become available on streaming services, like Disney Plus or Hulu. This gives talent another opportunity to cash in, this time for licensing deals with various streaming content providers. Eventually, if a film was well received, it could also end up syndicated on television. Syndicated films can continue to make money for studios and talent as long as the broadcaster continues to license and air the film. So that's what it looked like before. Here's what it's starting to look like today. Studios like Disney and Warner Media are releasing films both in theaters for cinema goers and online for the at-home audience at the same time. Viewers who watch in theaters pay the normal price per ticket for admission, and those who watch at home might pay twice. Once for a monthly subscription, and depending on the streaming service, again with a surcharge for early access to the film. Unlike box office, retail DVD, and licensing, streaming surcharges and subscription fees are usually not split with the talent. Depending on the actor's contract, they may still retain their back-end residuals for things like DVD sales, foreign sales, and pay-per-views, but those have always been far less lucrative compared to box office bonuses. With direct-to-streaming, studios have found a promising solution for poor box office sales. Actors and agents argue that same-day streaming is in direct competition with a theatrical release, and they're taking a huge loss in back-end residuals.
Well, Disney says they made about $60 million just from the digital side of that when they released Black Widow.
Dan Gallagher, who's been following the rise in popularity of streaming platforms for the Wall Street Journal, says Disney stockholders really wanted to see them invest in the streaming future.
When you put something out like Black Widow, where people have a choice on the day of, there's always going to be some number that choose that convenience. So it really can't help but to cannibalize some of that theatrical return.
At least 2 million households purchased the $30 early access stream on the film's opening weekend. Johansson's lawsuit argues that her contract with Disney's Marvel Entertainment guaranteed an exclusive theatrical release, and her salary was tied to the box office performance of the film. However, the film was released in theaters and on Disney Plus at the same time. A decision that a person familiar with the details of her contract said would cost her more than $50 million. Disney said it fully complied with Johansson's contract, and that the release of Black Widow on Disney Plus has significantly enhanced the actor's ability to earn additional compensation. Digital film releases are happening more and more. According to Real Good, straight-to-video on-demand movie premieres have more than tripled in Q4 year over year. In 2020, 228 film titles went straight to subscription videos on demand. The pandemic played a large part in accelerating the shift to premiering films online, but that option was already in motion before theaters began to close.
I definitely think that this is a path that perhaps we were always headed down. I just think that it might have been a couple of years down the road, and now because of COVID, it made it go fast.
So what are contracts going to look like moving forward? Matalana says that actors will need to negotiate contracts that focus far less on box office ticket sales, and A-list actors will likely try to negotiate a cut of any surcharge fees for early access to their new films. Actors with enough star power may even be entitled to revenue from new subscribers during a film's release.
2020 was a very ideal environment for streaming because people didn't have a lot of options. In a world where people have more entertainment options, it's going to normalize to something, I think, bigger than it was prior to the pandemic.
Streaming new movies at home is convenient for viewers, and for streaming platforms, very profitable. Agents and actors know this, and experts say that moving forward, they'll start looking for new and creative ways to negotiate their way into contracts that cut themselves in on the streaming profits.